Hi, this is Stuart Weems, and thanks for listening to the Investopoly podcast. My goal is to give you simple, easy to understand insights, strategies and tips to help you master the game of building wealth. And in this episode, I'd like to talk about holiday houses. So I guess the first thing I'd say is that I'm a big believer in getting some balance when it comes to managing money. Of course, we don't know how long we'll be on this planet for, so we certainly want to make the most of every day. But that doesn't mean, by the same token, that we should go out and spend with absolute abandon without any regard to putting some aside for tomorrow. And it's just a bit about balance, really, I think. And so often conversations with clients, we talk about buying holiday houses, or I get asked about buying holiday houses. So that's my first point, is that not everything you do is going to maximise your financial perspective or financial outcomes, I should say. And a holiday house can certainly provide you lots of non-financial benefits. So what I did is I sat down and compared two scenarios. The first scenario is that you went out and bought a holiday house for about $800,000, that you used it throughout the year and particularly during peak periods, but you might have put it on Airbnb for the off-peak periods, and that allowed you to generate around about $15,000 net of direct expenses such as cleaning and advertising and so forth. The option two was obviously not to go and buy an investment property, but instead to rent one. And I assumed that you rented at least for a couple of weeks during the peak period, during sort of Christmas and New Year period, and then probably sort of 4 weeks throughout the year, typically through school holiday periods and so forth. So they're the two scenarios that I compared. Now, a couple of things before we actually get to the results of that comparison. The first thing is you've got to be aware of the tax treatment. So if you think you can go out and buy a holiday home and negatively gear it like you would in investment property and save a bit of tax along the way, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to do that unless you make your best endeavours to make sure that the property is available for let throughout the whole year, including peak times. Now, if you're buying it for really lifestyle reasons, then it's probable that you'd want to occupy it during peak periods. Therefore, if it's not available to rent through peak periods, then the property is going to really miss out on most of its income or a large proportion of income it's able to earn. As such, it's likely the ATO will limit your tax deductions to the actual income earned, which means that the property is not going to have a tax impact, unlike negatively gearing into a pure investment property. The second comment is really what growth can you expect? So some holiday homes will be located in, say, for example, coastal areas that generate pretty strong capital growth. And so it's possible that we can go and buy ourselves a holiday house and actually tick two boxes, a lifestyle and potentially, dare I say it, an investment box. However, there's going to be some locations for holiday houses that are either going to be in sort of secondary areas or very much regional areas, and then they're unlikely to have a lot of capital growth. So it's in these numbers, what I did is I assumed that we're purchasing a coastal location or a location that's going to provide good capital growth, but not necessarily with the same level of low volatility that an inner city location will provide. And the numbers are pretty surprising, actually. Buying a holiday house isn't as bad, using the assumptions that I use, as I might have initially thought. It'll cost you about sort of 10% of your overall wealth. So that is, you could be 10% richer in 10 or 20 years if you don't buy the holiday house and instead you rent. So that's it's a reasonable proportion, I guess, but ultimately it's probably not going to change your life. It's not going to materially move your retirement goals. So before you run out and buy yourself a holiday house, there's a couple of things I want to talk about. How do you do it well, and what are the other key things to think about? So the first thing I would encourage you to do is be realistic about your usage. I assume that we're using it 2 weeks over Christmas and New Year's and 4 weeks through the year, so 6 weeks in total. So that's a pretty, what's that, sort of about 45 days throughout the year. If you're not going to use it that much, then you're probably better off renting. So be realistic about your usage. It's a little bit like buying a treadmill. People buy a treadmill, put it in the house, think, oh, great, I'm going to run every night, and then it sits there unused for year after year. So if you're got other commitments, work, family, children, so forth, they can really impede your ability to enjoy your holiday house. So how do you do it well? So if you're going to go and buy a property, how do you do it well? The first thing is you've got to determine your price point. And spending less doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be better off. So if you're purchasing in a location that's quite secondary, then really the less you spend, the better. Whereas if you're going to purchase in an area that does have the potential to generate capital growth, then actually spending a little bit more and getting a better quality asset actually reduces your risk. So if you're in a coastal area, spending a bit more and getting water views, for example, water views drive a lot of capital growth, that's actually in your better interest. The second thing is then apply the laws of supply and demand that apply to property. So that is, you want a strong land value component, you want scarcity, particularly in terms of water views and so forth, and then you want proven performance. So you only want to buy a house that has proven to generate strong capital growth over the past. So I've included more information in the show notes and links and so forth. So that's holiday houses, people. Until next time, bye for now.